Thank you very much for attending this Worldwide Slot Car Chat, number 28, I believe. I'm your host, Craig Gaub. Today we've got most of our regulars here, RK, John Kent, Steve, Dennis, Jeremy. We've also got Chris Walker and Slothead and other people. And I'm sure we'll get more as time goes by. I do have a couple of suggested topics to bring up so we can have some things to chat about if nobody else has anything to chat about already. So, as always, does anybody have any topics or show and tell or questions or circle back on anything? Or
I have a quick show and tell for Dennis.
All right, hit us, Chris.
Okay.
A little background. Dennis sent me an email last night asking about some bushings and bushing alignment for slotted pods and stuff like that. So I just want to pull this picture up and then I'll give you a little background as we go along. Now.
Chris has been well known for doing this before, that you take a slotted pod that uses those little spherical bushings, and sometimes due to space requirements, you need something a little narrower. So what he does is he gets rid of the original bushing and redrills the pod. But I was interested in how he manages to keep the alignment going. So, okay.
Ready to learn.
Can you see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So on the right-hand side, Dennis, is your typical 3/16 bushing single flange.
Yeah.
And when I was using those, Dennis asked how, as he said, I pretty well get rid of all the spherical bushings in slotted pods and scale auto pods and all the rest of the stuff. You know, they tout them as self-aligning, which is sort of true, but by definition, they always become self-unaligning. And when the molds get older, in order for the little spherical bushing, which is on the left-hand side on the axle, in order for that to sort of rotate in the bushing cups, there has to be some movement. So if there's movement, you introduce a little, less efficiency and less integrity to the rear axle, so the rear axle can move around a bit. So what I've been doing for quite a while is shaving the little fingers that hold this little spherical bushing on the left, shaving those off, reaming out the axle hole and putting on a 3/16 bushing and or ball bearing on the right-hand side. Now that required me to open up the holes a little bit to get this in. Since then, Slotted now offers pods that accept a 3/16 bushing or ball bearing. So that's kind of good. The thing I wanted to tell Dennis about was the bushings in the middle.
There's Ernie's new bushings, by the way.
Yeah, Ernie's new bushings. Now, basically, if you just cut the fingers off of anything, a slotted pod, a scale auto pod,
yeah,
the OD of the is 1/8 of an inch. So
okay.
that 1/8 of an inch is basically what slotted and scale auto have once you get past the fingers.
Oh, okay. So they fit straight in.
Yeah. Well, you
might have to ream it a little. So it's 3 millimeters, and you've got to take it out to 1/8 of an inch.
Yeah. So they will push in snugly, but then it's a bit of a bugger to get them aligned if they sort of hang up where they are. So you're correct. If you just clean the hole up so there's just a snick of movement in there, they work great, and then you can glue them in alignment.
Yeah, that's fine if you're going to use bushings. If you're going to use bearings, you still got to take the hole out to 3/16.
And for that, there's no magic as far, well, I haven't figured out a magic way. What I'm just using is a tapered reamer. And then just go very slowly and very carefully with the tapered reamer and take the holes out to
side by side. Okay. So you're relying you're effectively relying on the alignment of the hole that's there already to maintain.
Yeah, and I mean, I do make the holes a tiny bit oversized and then go back with a jig with setup wheels and all the rest of the stuff to get it as close as I can get it.
Okay, thanks.
Haven't had a problem so far with doing those, but these bushings that Ernie has done, they're very cool. You can't really see, but there
They have
is
a groove on the inside, yeah.
Yeah, there's a 3 thou deep groove on the inside about halfway through.
Yeah.
Because these aren't sintered, so the small groove will hold the oil. He's sent a bunch of these to a few of the guys in Chicago, and they've been using them, testing them on a couple of wing cars, and they have done apparently thousands and thousands of laps. With no failures, no issues, no problems whatsoever, and they're a really nice free spinning bush.
Yeah.
So the good news is yours are already in the mail.
Oh, thank you.
I've sent you a few pair, and
Okay.
I've also he's
Cool.
doing a typical 3/16 bushing as well with the same slot in the inside. So I put a couple of pairs of those in the mail for you today as well.
Thank you very much. Just so the other guys know, part of the reason for these particular designs with the small, with a large shoulder and the small size, comes from a crazy rule that happens in 1/24th scale, the ISRA racing for their production class. This is the International World Championship level production class where everybody has to use the same stamped steel chassis. Now, because they're stamped steel, the alignment's not always terribly good, and the rules do not allow you to grind or file on the chassis at all. So the only way to make sure that you have absolutely perfect alignment of the rear axle vertically, horizontally, laterally, whatever, is to have a bushing where the piece that fits through the hole in the chassis is actually significantly smaller than the hole, so that you then solder on the outside. So the outer big flange solders to the steel of the chassis, and the inner one, being that small, allows you to properly align the whole chassis. So that's where that idea came from.
Yeah.
But you don't do this on a slotted pod, though, do you?
Sorry?
These are for slotted pods, right?
No. I mean, they work. They fit perfectly in a slotted pod, but as Dennis said,
it's coincidental. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But if you depending on what you're doing and what level you're racing at, taking out the sphere, the first step is the slotted pods used to come with just a brass spherical bushing. And then they've upgraded those, and you can buy replacement sintered bronze spherical bushings, which are the same dimensions and they pop right in, but they're sintered so they hold oil, which is good for a proxy series, a long proxy series, because you can't re-oil them and all the rest of the stuff. But you know, a single flange bushing like this, compared to most bushings and bushings on the market, is a pretty good upgrade for a lot of 32nd scale cars.
Yeah, and the main differences or advantages between what we're looking at in the center and what we're looking at on the right is weight, and then the little the line in the middle to hold oil.
It is, but yes, for wing car racing, light is of utmost importance in every single thing you do. This, as Dennis said, was basically for a lot of the stamped steel chassis to do a better job on aligning because of the rules.
Okay, so there's more play in that to get it more
correct.
Yeah, correct. For most, pretty well all cars that are non-potted, so Scalextrics, Flies, all the rest of the stuff, you would use the one on the right, which is a 3/16 size, 3/32 inside, 3/16 on the flange outside. And you just glue those into a Fly or a Scalextrics car, and they make a massive difference versus the pretty loose nylon stuff that's in there anyway. So
and,
anyhow.
And Slotted make a Sidewinder pod now that takes a 3/16 by 332 ball bearing or one of those bushings.
Yep.
The only thing you've got to remember is that a slotted axle does not fit inside a regular 332 ball bearing because they're thousands oversized.
Right.
Yeah, it's crazy. There's the just that little difference between what NSR use and Thunderslot use and Scale Auto use and what Slotted uses means that you can almost not mix the parts if you want to be completely nuts perfect on fit, right? Slotted wheels on an NSR axle are just that little bit loose. They, just a thousandth or two clearance. The other way around, you have to remount an NSR wheel if you want it to fit on a slotted axle properly. And it's just one of those crazy things.
Yeah, and again, everything counts in small amounts. So if there is a tiny little bit of slot for home racing, for stuff like that, you're probably not going to notice the difference. Certainly, as the track gets smoother, so if you're on a wood track and the competition gets higher, you want everything to be as precise as you possibly can get. So you'll find that the better racers actually don't use slotted and or NSR and or Scale Auto axles. They'll all use 3/32 drill blank axles, which are a lot harder, better finish, straighter, blah, 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 blah. But,
and fit the ball bearings properly.
Yeah, but don't if you've got and you're in your club at your house and your home and stuff like that, don't throw all your stuff away. You don't need it's not, replacing an axle that's 0.0001 difference in diameter is not, you're not going to
see a performance increase there.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Does anybody have any other questions about this for Chris or Dennis? All righty. Does anybody else have anything they want to talk about? Or go ahead, John.
How much are they, Chris?
The bushings?
Yeah.
Well, the cool thing about bushings, like any of those, the sintered ones that were on the right-hand side, and Ernie's bushings, they're all sort of commercial grade bushings. They're way better and they're a lot cheaper than standard slotted bushings or anything you'd buy from NSR. You can go to, PCH Parts or, a lot of the commercial 124th racing centers and buy a pair of, good quality sintered bronze oil lights for, $1.50 a pair. I mean, they're not.
Well, I think they're $2.50 a pair now.
Okay.
I just ordered some yesterday from some Kofod ones yesterday from Pacific Slot Car, and that's like $2.39 a pair or something.
There you go. I guess that's just inflation, right?
Insignificant amounts of money, though. Absolutely insignificant amounts of money.
I got one more quick picture that I want to show if you don't mind.
Oh, go ahead.
We were talking about motor size, and Dennis was talking about, what's involved in, top level Eurosport racing and all the rest of that stuff. So this, you guys see that?
Yeah.
Okay. This is one of Ernie's 124 scale Eurosport chassis. And this is an experimental, everything we're talking about is lightweight, small, lightweight, small, lightweight, small. This whole car weighs less than 50 grams as it is, made out of steel. And just from a comparative basis, this is an experimental motor that that he and a guy named Dan Miller are playing around with. And beside that, I put an 050, tiny little motor that we use in our 32nd scale slot cars. And then your basic FF or FC130 motor, just to show the relative size of the gears. and everything's different. These things spin. This is geared 5 to 39. And
So
it's
nearly
still,
8 to 1.
yeah, and it still needs more gear. So, you know, six and a half.
Chris, sorry to interrupt, but that gear looks awfully close to dragging on the track.
Well, these tires are pretty worn. They've done a bunch of laps and stuff like that. But I mean,
when those guys start, they start with 32 thousandths of clearance,
yeah.
0.8 millimeters.
Yeah, but I mean, sort of the important thing here is if you just look at so this has tiny, tiny, tiny tires on it. They're smaller in diameter than the bloody 050 motor, right? And it's still geared almost 7 to 1. So anyways, this is stuff most of us don't, or a lot of you guys don't normally see. So there's nothing to be learned here out of just other than sort of like a pretty picture and some interesting stuff. So
to help us kind of get, I mean, the FC130 in there really helps, you know, the home racer guys, because that's your typical, you know, scale electric motor. But can you pop up a picture of your more common motor in that kind of car?
I don't. I'd have to go looking.
I'll find some.
You got some? It's not a whole ton bigger.
So Chris, it looks like that motor has literally been made by hand.
Well, I mean, this is probably one of the best armature builders anywhere. Is a guy named Dan Miller from Toronto. And he builds most of the armatures. Like, he's got tons of world record armatures and used to do all the, when electric motors were big in RC racing 10 or 15 years ago, he would do all the factory team armatures and stuff like that. I was lucky when I was 15. Dan was like a mentor and a sponsor for me to race all this stuff. So, I mean, the motors, the FC130 motor has about 130 turns of wire around each pole, and they're very, very skinny. The motor in the Euros, so the one on the left is 130 turns. The one on the right has 9 turns of 25 gauge wire.
9 or 19?
9. 925 in this motor. Dan Miller has given him some new stack material, and he's changing the shape of the stacks to get 11 turns in there.
I hope this guy owns a Tesla.
All right, that tells you why it's geared 8 to 1 or close on 8 to 1. 535, 539.
539.
So that's nearly 8 to 1.
Yeah.
That thing probably will rev if you were brave enough to give it the full 12 volts and all the amps that it can eat, and you were brave enough to let it rev free without a load, it would probably top 200,000 RPM.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I mean, okay, that's a.
I'm out.
All right, Chris is showing you that the more normal size. All right, this is what's called a GT12, which is a very similar kind of car with a similar type of chassis. But this motor is what we call a C-can, which is a little bigger than our regular 132 motor in physical size. All right, but here the armature that's in this one has, I think, 55 turns of 29 gauge wire, because it's a what's called a Group 12 armature, and this thing probably can rev to 100,000 or so. And it has regular what we nowadays call ceramic magnets in it. Then the motors that I run in Eurosport cars look like that. So you can see how much smaller it is in basically the same frame or similar frame, right? Maybe if I turn them this way, the size, the opening in the back of the car for the frame is pretty much the same size on both of those. But this one has one of these Eurosport motors in it, which it's somewhat different to the one that Chris showed in that the armature stack is much shorter. The motor's a little wider, and this one is geared 246 to 45, so it's also right up there in the 7.5 to 1 range. And the magnets in these are all samarium cobalt. They're not even neodymiums. They're samarium cobalts because they handle the temperatures much better than neo does. Neodymium magnets tend to lose a lot of their magnetic field when they get very hot, but the samarium cobalt ones don't. They're very, very different kind of motor, that, right? Very expensive, unbelievably fast. Sometimes these things are, just, there are times when I don't know how we managed to drive them. I was going to say, while you've got me, and if we're finished with those motors, I had some shows and tells. If you want to.
Does anybody have any more questions about the motor stuff or the bushing stuff? Hearing none, go ahead and do your show and tell.
Okay, just 2 new cars that came into my I should share my screen. There we go. 2 new cars that came into my garage. This is the new Revo slot Ferrari F40. Really nice with the typical Revo slot anodized aluminum machine chassis that's in 2 pieces that rattles around a little bit. There's standard angle winder, pretty much the same mechanically as all the other cars that they've been producing, which is nice because everything works well. A very pretty car. They've done a very, very nice job on this one. I haven't yet put the little Ferrari decals on it, which are provided in the bottom of the box. They don't provide them stuck on already, which I presume is something about getting around licensing or who knows what. So that's a new one that's just come in, and then the Racer Sideways Toyota Celica Group 5 car, again standard Toyota standard Racer Sideways Group 5 mechanicals, so it will run alongside the Lancias and the the Lancias and the BMWs and all of the other Group 5 cars. Very pretty, very nicely done. Just thought I'd show you those.
Have you put either one of them on your track?
I've had the Ferrari, the Revo slot on the track, yes, and it runs really very, very nicely.
That's what I was curious about, because
yeah.
the slot at Ferrari F40 is well known to be an exceptional running car.
Yeah, and this is very nice. It's something about, I guess, about just the proportions of an F40 make a good slot car. A long nose and a short tail, right? That's pretty much what you want most times. But yeah, I've run that one. I ran it on my home track. I've actually run it on the commercial track too, and it runs very, very nicely on a commercial track on its stock tires. Obviously, my car, the tires have already been trued and the ground's true and the fronts have been ground and coated and so on. And one thing, if you guys ever get one of these, just be careful, have a good look. When I received this one, the rear axle was mounted at a crazy angle in the car because they had somehow gotten the uprights at the rear gotten mixed up, and it had one rear upright and one front upright holding the rear axle, and the front uprights are about 0.5 millimeter shorter than the rear ones. So the whole axle was at an angle in the car, and therefore when you put it down, the one front wheel was about an 1/8 of an inch off the track. But I fixed that.
didn't come with spare axle holders, did it?
No, but Alan was very responsive and very quick to send me a new set, and so everything is good, and it was an easy changeover.
Yeah, I would have expected nothing less from Alan.
And the sideways car hasn't been on the track yet because there's no way I can open my track at the moment because of all the fires that we're having down here, and the smoke and the ash that's covered everything. My patio where my track stands is an absolute mess with ash and burned pieces of wood and dead leaves from the wind, and we've had a pretty rough week.
Well,
how far are you from
the evacuation zones that happened down here got to within about 2 miles of our house. Yeah, it was close. Something like 90,000 people had to be evacuated in our area. Fortunately, no loss of life, and so far no loss of property. So that's very, very good.
Well, let's move on.
Enough talk from me. Yeah.
I want to hear happy things, not depressing things. Happy is nobody's hurt, everybody's house is okay. That's your happy. That's our silver lining. Steve, did he answer your question?
Yeah, I just wondered how close they were, to him. Yeah.
Yeah, it was closer than we've had them before, but fortunately still far enough away that we didn't have to move.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us, Dennis. Love to see those new cars. Does anybody else have any show and tell or topics or questions or anything they want to bring up? I'll go ahead and look at my topic list while everybody's thinking about that. Well, that's actually, we'll go ahead and pull up my next topic, which is nicely segued from what you just brought up. Person suggested the topic of best bang for the buck in slot cars for your type of racing. So whatever type of racing you do, what would you say is the best bang for buck, presumably close enough to ready to run car that you can think of? Does anybody want to start?
I'll start.
All right.
Easy, slotted.
Slotted.
Yeah.
Very, very simple. Beautiful cars. They run fine out of the box. If you want to run them with magnets, you can run them with magnets. The latest ones, the tires are actually getting good enough that you can almost run them, that you can run them on a wood track. In general, the quality is great. So I would say, if I could only buy one make of car, that would be it.
They are the best buy for the money. They really are.
Yeah.
The Group 5 cars sideways are pretty good, for the money.
Yeah, there's definitely,
they're quick.
I haven't been doing this as long as you guys, but I would say that it seems like there are more options in 1/32 hard body, scale racing, as far as high quality, good running cars than there was before. I mean, years ago when I started, slotted was pretty much it. NSR was way too expensive to even consider. They're still pretty expensive, but they seem to have come down. Slotted have gone up a little bit. And then
but you
have repo and sideways and stuff. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, the slotteds are just as quick as the NSRs with a little bit of work. Thunder slots, if you just want to buy fast for the money, you can't beat it. I mean, they're building an awfully quick, good car, a little more money. Those kind of are the top brands over here where we race, sideways, slotted, thunder slot. Then it's all mixed up after that.
I've been quite impressed with some of the Scale Auto cars lately, particularly the GT3 cars. Some of those have been very nice.
And that's kind of a hard question. I mean, we have 12 different classes to choose from, and I'm sure you guys have several different things also. And
yeah, I mean,
we get more and more interested in the body styles almost. I mean, it's how much we like cars. I mean, if you like 917 Porsches, okay, you're going to buy a Carrera, or you're going to look for a good fly. you know, or an NSR. I mean, you know, each of those is a entirely different class. But yeah, if a guy is just wants a good running car, how do you beat slotted? You know, for 50, 60 bucks, good grief, you know.
You know, in all fairness, we really shouldn't. I mean, we're narrowing a focus. If you've got a home plastic track and it's not that big and you don't want to do a lot of work and you want to leave the magnet in, there is absolutely nothing wrong with Scalextric cars.
Or Carrera. Then there's nothing wrong with Carrera, Scalextric, or any of them.
Nope, they go around and around, and you can abuse the hell out of them, and you know they're not expensive, and you know, so it's sort of a question of, you know, what's the best bang for your buck really fast car, or what's the best bang for your buck like have fun with your friend's car. So
I totally agree. You know, you're right. You're right.
I think that's why, Steve, you're right. That it was a very difficult question, because there has to be some context as to what your use and like how are you intending to use these cars.
Right. The Scalextrics have been going up in price, though. They're not nearly as competitive price-wise as they used to be. And Carrera not setting a MSRP for their cars, generally retailers sell them for just crazy low prices. So I mean, if you're talking about bang for your buck magnet cars, I would say Carrera all the way.
Yep.
Carrera puts more stuff into their cars for 32 bucks than you almost can't believe it.
Yeah.
We started a Carrera GT class just because they were 32 bucks, and why not? You know, we pull the magnets and run them.
And Steve, to your earlier point, if you want to do sort of, you know, club racing from the 60s, they've got cars like the Porsche 904 and the Ferrari that you can grab and have a, you know, sort of a time period race as well. So yeah, I know you're absolutely right.
For 32 bucks. You know,
if I can, this was kind of my topic suggestion. I'm sorry I hopped in on this one late, but I managed to mute you guys. I turned something off and I couldn't hear anybody. It took me a while to figure it out. And that was kind of the point I was getting at. For me, Carrera is hard to beat. Even at my local hobby shop, he sells the Carreras for, I believe, $32 or $34 a piece. But if you buy two, it drops to $32 a piece. And if you buy three, he drops them to $28 a piece.
That's
jeez.
So the cars are beautiful. And again,
Brian, so I was going to say, Brian, if you buy enough, they'll pay you.
Yeah, pretty close. And again, I'm a non-competitive, you know, we call it gentleman racing around here. The cars are beautiful. They're rugged. One thing I do like is a lot of their soft parts, if you will, mirrors and wings, come off easy, and they even give you spares in the box on a lot of those pieces. I find them to be pretty durable. Motors that sometimes could be hit or miss, you know, I tend to buy cars in pairs. Like I buy two Capris, I'll buy two Audi RS5s. It's just kind of a thing with me. And sometimes not so much with the newer cars, but there can be a lot of disparity, but that can be said with anybody. You know, Scalextric, same thing. You can buy two Camaros and have them run totally differently. And online, sometimes deals can be fantastic. I found somebody on eBay, I think it's either BRC or BCR Hobbies, had Carreras listed for $19.99 a piece with $11 in shipping. Now, that brings that up to a $30 car, but additional cars were $3 a piece for shipping. So now I ended up buying 6 cars from them. I had 6 cars shipped to me, 6 Carreras, 3 DTMs and 3 GT3s for $153.
That's insane.
And again, for the type of racing I do, they're great. I have slotted. I love them to death. I've got a pair of Alphas, a pair of Group Cs. I've got a pair of McLarens. I've got a pair of Ferraris. And yes, they're an absolute blast. And I have the old black Audi, what is it, 8, RS8, I think. And that thing is just with the magnet, again, we're magnet racers, that thing is just a blur. But for me, the Carrera stuff, it's hard to beat for the value. And I've got Scalextrics too. And I don't know, I think Carrera, dollar for dollar, for the type of stuff I do, unless I find it super special on something else, tough to beat. And they've been $31.99 most places for 5-6 years now. I mean, you go back to some of the old HRW archives where he reviewed these cars, he would give retail prices, and you know, cars they released in 2014, 2015, they were $31.99, and you can still find those routinely for $31.99 at Professor Motor, Slot Car Corner. $100, the shipping's free.
I was just going to say, Brian, you couldn't get the bodies unpainted for that.
No, I can't. I have a 3D printer, and I've been messing around with printing chassis and kind of doing my versions of the old thingies, mainly because I have no design skills, and to try and design and draw a body at Tinkercad is a little beyond me, so my shapes were very basic. But by the time you buy axles, gears, tires, wheels, bushings, motor, brushes, guide, I can't build a car even when I'm building the body and the chassis for that kind of money. Now, tunability, yeah, not a whole lot of room in there to add weight, you know, for you guys who like to race without magnets. One thing I really don't like on some of their cars are the independent front wheels, because there can be a lot of slop in those. Fortunately, the last group I bought, except for the Capris, it had a one-piece axle up front, which makes them a little easier to, you know, to true the tires up and a little bit and tune them up and get them to run. But yeah, for me, tough to beat those. Now, again, I'm not competitive. Obviously, then my next one would be, and I think somebody already said it again, my volume was so screwed up I couldn't tell, slotted. I mean, come on, anywhere between 45 and 55 bucks, you know, for a basic car. Obviously, some of the newer releases are more. Again, fabulous slot car. You know, how do you beat that? But I'm in that boat. My local hobby shop also carries NSR and Revo. He started carrying those recently, some of the higher end ones. But for the type of racing I do, I can't justify spending 90 bucks on a Revo. You know, a 65-foot plastic track when we're not competing, for me, at least right now, I can't justify that. The Carrera stuff, a ball, having a ball with it. The rubber's actually fairly good on a Scale Electric track. I do find sometimes the tires might be a little loose. So I just use a little nail polish. I don't like to use things like super glue on those because they destroy the plastic wheels. If you ever decide you want to change tires, it can be a mess. But usually the plastic rubber on the Scaly track on the newer cars is just fine. I mean, you got the grandkids coming over or something, you know, a couple of those DTMs, which has become a very popular class for Carrera. They produce a lot of different cars in that class. And tough to beat. I mean, I've got my fastest ones right now are probably doing close to 7-second laps on a 65 to 70 foot track. Not too bad for out of the box.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to beat the value that Carrera cars are able to be presented with. And I think I mentioned this earlier that they don't guide retailers with an MSRP. They just sell at whatever they sell their wholesale at, and the retailers can sell at whatever they want to sell at, no big deal. And then, so we have a bunch of online only, you know, so hobby stores that only sell online. They don't have a brick and mortar to pay the rent on. They have very little overhead. I mean, they're probably selling out of their garage half the time. And so they can sell cars for $1 or $2 profit and call it good. And then, you know, then you've got places like 132 or, you know, other places with actual brick and mortar stores to support. They've got to charge a little bit more at the very least overhead for those cars to help support their business. I mean, that's a whole nother topic. You know, if I got Alan on here, he'd go on for the whole 2 hours about how shops like that are killing the hobby. But it's hard for a lot of people. You've got no choice. You've got no brick and mortar hobby store to go to. Your only choice is online. But then it leads us back to the topic of, you know, how do you get more people involved in the hobby without exposure? And if they already know about it to shop online, then you're not targeting those people. You're trying to find people who've never seen it before. Circular debate there. But yeah, we did mention slotted cars. That was basically everybody's initial go-to. So as far as tunable cars, you know, to be able to, you know, tweak and tune and you know,
something you can make competitive.
Yeah, slotted is hard to beat as far as, you know, price, you know, bang for the buck when you're at that kind of thing.
you mentioned the brick and mortar. I say my local shop's a 2-hour round trip.
Oh, God.
So local's not exactly local, but interestingly enough, the last time I was in there, which was only about 3 weeks ago, I bought the Caprice from him. They were in the process of setting up a little Carrera track right in the shop. And this guy's a big hobby shop, a lot of trains, pretty good selection of slot cars. I bet there was, if I had to guess, I bet he had over 200 in stock on display. Track-wise, he's a Carrera-only type. He doesn't carry anything by Scalextrics, but huge RC, planes, boats, trains. Mark Twain Hobby is the name of the place. They do have a website. Now on the website, they're $36 for the cars, but in-house, he's actually cheaper if you go in person than if you buy online. So they don't offer the same deal online as they do if you buy from the store.
Yeah, and every store, every retailer will have their own pricing methods. That's interesting that he charges more online than in the store, but I'm sure he has a lot higher margin things that he has no problem getting a profit from. When you're talking about a store like an store that's like just slot cars, like nothing other than slot cars, then he's got, he can't do loss leaders like that and bring people in for cheap cars and then hook them with RC cars or more expensive cars or something like that. So
our slot cars is definitely not his bread and butter in that place. And he also doesn't have nearly as big a selection online. He actually has more cars in store than he does on the website. He doesn't have any of the Revo NSR, and I think he might have had some Scale Auto in there last time I was there too. He's just starting to bring them in. But again, I thought it was kind of neat. We're setting up a little Carrera oval in there, for people to just come and kind of mess with. So,
I mean, that's perfect. That's literally how I got back into the hobby because, I would meet my parents with my kids and we'd have lunch every Sunday. And we would typically have lunch at, like an Applebee's or something like that. In that shopping center, there was the Fantasy World Hobbies retail store. And we said, hey, let's go over and look there. My son had some birthday money to burn in a hole in his pocket. So we went over there and they had a slot car track and they had fun playing with it. And I had fun playing with it. I'm like, oh, I remember these, and played with it. Next thing you know, we're all into slot cars. But without that hobby store there and with the slot cars there to pull the trigger on, who knows what we would have ended up walking out with. So it's great that they're putting up a track and hopefully
it's going to come from somewhere.
Brian. Hey Brian, I had a quick question. I missed something. You said you had your own track is a Scalextrics track, right?
That is correct.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious. My track is Scalextrics and I run Carrera and Scalextrics and every other thing I can get my hands on it. But I find that the Carrera cars on Scalextrics track have tremendous magnetic attraction and a lot of them can go around full throttle. I was wondering if you found that too.
That's a well-known issue and it's basically because Carrera's track is stainless steel, which has less of a magnetic effect, and so they put more magnets in their cars. Right. Whereas Scalextric track is nickel-plated steel, and so it doesn't need as much magnet for cars to hold on to that track. So you put a Carrera car, it's stuck down. You pretty much have to, shim the magnets or remove shims from the magnets or take magnets out for them.
Yeah, I'm in the process of.
There's actually a couple ways to deal with that. And actually, I would say some of my Scalextrics have more than some of my Carrera, especially the motor. Now, I haven't pulled the one out behind the axle so much because of that, the way they install it. They use a plastic cover, and I'm afraid of breaking that thing.
It's a pain in the butt.
But the front one is actually two-piece. There's a magnet and a shim. And I believe out of the box, the shim comes on top of the magnet. So you can open that up and put the shim down underneath. And I've also found just removing that central magnet can still provide you with good grip and good control without the excessive magnetic force. I also thought, and I don't know Carrera track that well, I think most of their transformers are in the 14.5 range voltage that they run in their systems. So if you're running your Scaly, like I have a separate power supply, And I'll play with that. Some of the Carreras I have like to run at about 13.5. I have others. I have a couple of Corvettes that are just beasts at 12 volts. C7 Corvettes, the Whelen, the red and white Whelen, and I forget what the yellow and white C7 was. At 12 volts, they're absolutely fantastic. At 13 volts, 13 and a half volts, they're hold on to your ass type thing. You got to tune them down. Two of my favorites are some older Audis. I'm sorry, not Audis, Alphas that I got some time ago. I'm sorry I'm not as aware of the classes that you guys are on these things. They are definitely, I would say they're from the 80s. One's an OKP. Let's see, what's it say on here? And obviously it doesn't say on the, oh, here it is. Well, let's do this. You see that? That little Audi right there? Or Alpha, I keep calling it an Audi. These things are an absolute joy. Here's the other one, sans spoiler.
Yeah, that's an Alfa Romeo, not an Audi, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
a Giulietta.
yeah. Well, there's a difference between an Alfa and an Alfa Romeo. They are Alfa Romeos. You know, I mean, come on, Carrera, come on. Does it get any prettier than that? And then now that I got the 3917s. There's some of the new ones there. Yeah, those six cars right there. Actually, there's one on the track. $153 shipped. I mean, come on. How do you beat
Brian, Brian, that looks like a fun layout you've got there.
I kind of like it. I don't know how well you're going to see that.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, if you hold it still.
4x16. This is a very hostile environment down here because if you look down there, that white box at the end, that's actually a target for an air rifle range. We shoot 10-meter air rifle down here as well. 4x16. I've got, Greg, you should make your heart happy here. You see that? It's an Arc 1.
Yeah.
But dipping the toes, but I use separate driver stations, variable brakes, reversible switch. I made up. The computer's actually hooked to a webcam that I'm using Ultimate Racer 30 on for lap times and pit stops, which is kind of fun. And at one time, I actually had 5 tables. But this is also a very messy woodworking shop. You know, I'd mentioned Mr. Kit before that I do custom guitar work type stuff. It's also the laundry room and everything else.
Oh, is that a hold on, time out. Is that a semi-hollow body telly?
It is with a Strat neck.
Oh.
All right. This ain't a guitar.
I guess while I'm doing, you can see some of the other collection. There's some Scalies in here. A vet from a couple of my first sets. The Slotits, the Led Zeppelin McLaren. Was that? I think this was Dan Gurney. A couple of Group C's picked up used. A couple of Alphas, Ferraris, and Revels. Now you want to talk about beasts and magnetics. This 65 Corvette, even at 13 volts, I can run around this track at full blast. There is so much magnet on it. It's ridiculous, but it's such a pretty car. Same with the Greenwood Corvette, the March, the Creepy Crawly. They didn't even think about brakes on that thing. It is so fast, even at 12 volts. On my 16-foot straightaway, I have to let off the trigger at about 9 feet and let it coast through the corner at the end. Should look, I think someone was just doing some Lolas here, worked a little bit. Nice little Revell. And if you can look, you can also see, I don't know if Greg brought this topic up yet, on how do you keep them clean?
Nope, hadn't gotten to that one yet.
Yeah. So kind of what I got going here right now. But, and the reason the one table is unpainted is when I first redid the workshop, I moved the woodworking to the larger side and the track to the smaller. I dropped it to 3 tables, and this other one ended up being a workbench, and I hadn't painted the tables then. When I moved it, I painted the 3. And then when I decided to put the fourth one back in, I haven't yet caught up and painted it. You may also notice gaps between the tables. Those are intentional. I've got 5 taps on this track. And that allows me to run the wires up for the taps just about anywhere I need them without having to drill holes in the table. You know, so a little quarter, you know, you probably see one right there popping up out of the, between the tables.
Good idea.
Well, that's what I got going.
So Brian, how long before you do the strat in the Porsche Gulf livery?
Yeah, actually, I'm probably more of a fan of the Sunoco color scheme.
Oh, if you pinstripe it, that'd be awesome.
But I don't do a lot of finish work here. I leave that more to the experts. Yeah, I'm more likely to go that than the Gulf.
That'll work. That'll work.
Yeah.
Blue and yellow, baby.
Yep, never hurts.
Well, thank you very much for showing us your track there, Brian, and your car.
Thanks for putting up with me. So
we love to see people.
I'm still actually technically on the clock, but you know, I'm a federal employee, so it's your tax dollars at work. So I figure I'm still kind of doing a public service.
Well, does anybody else have anything they want to show and tell, topics they want to bring up before I bring up one of Brian's other topic suggestions?
Oh, just the last thing for Brian, I wouldn't worry too much about the government. I'd worry more about the wife after buying all that Carrera stuff.
I have a feeling
that got a new tablet in the mail today.
What's that? Sorry?
She got a new tablet in the mail today, so she's being okay.
All right. Nothing like reciprocity, man.
Exactly.
Happy wife, happy life, right?
Yeah,
all right.
if
Well,
nothing else, after 40 years, I learned that.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and bring up another one of his topics, what he mentioned earlier, keeping the cars clean. Clean cars always run faster. What are your tips or techniques for cleaning your cars? Me personally, I open it up and I blow it out and then I shut it again. And that's only after I notice so much gunk in there that I'm concerned for the performance of the car. Most of the time, I just don't do it.
But isn't that also a function of how you store your cars as well?
I think he might be referring to like the racing rubber that ends up on the inside of your body and all over your chassis and motor and stuff. I don't know, Brian, were you talking about something other than that?
Well, a little bit of everything. You can see my cars sit out on my table. So, I mean, dust will form in a vacuum. So, John, I'm sure even the stuff you have in the slot car cupboard occasionally needs to be cleaned. I'm also a smoker. So, you know, the basement's the only place in the house I'm allowed to do that. So I do tend to take full advantage of that. Plus the wood shop's down there. And I mean, just environmentally, things get ugly. As a matter of fact, that those 3 917s and that blue McLaren you saw, the open cockpit ones, to me, not so hard. I used some mild dish soap, a soft paper towel, and I kind of gave them a soft bath and cleaned them off. But cars like with full interiors that you can't easily remove, you know, hard water, that's the last thing I want to see is, you know, hard water spots on the inside of my windshields. You know, so I don't know if some of these guys just, you know, I know when I was in the motorcycles, a lot of guys, just to keep their motorcycles looking good for a quick wipe down, used to use things like Pledge. So a little bit of lemon Pledge on a rag, quick wipe down on the gas tank, and you were good, you know, when you didn't have time to do the full detail. So is anybody using...
They're probably not storing their motorcycles in a woodworking shop.
True.
And if they are, then it's probably got a cover on it.
Right, but I'll blow the dust, and I do have a cover for the track. So when I'm typically doing any kind of, when I'm running the CNC or anything like that, you know, I have a cover for it. Okay. But still, it's, you know, some of those cars are over 10 years old. You know, I started this back in 2008 when I moved back from Europe. So some of those cars just, you know, you set anything out for 12 years, it's going to acquire gunk.
Especially,
and that's
so your first step is to stop smoking, because damn, that shit gets everywhere and it's gross. I mean,
Yes.
not to mention your lungs, but I know you've heard this all before.
Yeah, it's one of the few joys left in my life, guys. Come on.
But yeah, so I had to have nothing on how to get rid of the smoke schmutz. Does anybody else here smoke if they get their car schmutzy and know how to clean it up? Yeah,
we figured out.
A candle is a good way to get rid of cigarette smoke, isn't it? So if you light a candle at the side of the track or something, that might help.
Oh, to help dissipate the smoke before it gets on the car?
Yeah. Well, and afterwards, I think.
Oh, your basement's ventilated. I had windows open and exhaust fans running. Don't get me wrong, my basement doesn't smell like an old ashtray or anything like that. But I mean, I have grandchildren running around the house. So
of course it does.
Yeah. Well, okay. All right. But I mean, it's not like it's a strip club someplace where it's a haze, a fog.
Yeah.
So, and it's not just the smoke. There are other environmental things. The washer and dryer are down there.
Furnace.
Like I said, furnace.
Yeah.
Actually, the slot car track on the short end near where you saw the computer, that butts right up to the edge of the furnace, which is why the two tables ends aren't square.
Yeah. To be fair, even without the wood shop and your smoking, your track would probably gather debris. I mean, mine's in my garage. It does. Most of my cars, well, pretty much all of my cars are stored in those cheap plastic, drawers that you get from the department store, because, they hold cars in a nice quantity. So they don't get real dusty. So most of the dirt in my cars is just racing rubber. The track gets a little dusty. I don't have a cover for my track, but I also rarely do any wood shop type stuff in my garage. Mostly it's just 3D printing happening in my garage. So, I'll print it down.
Like that as well.
Yeah. I mean,
we found a way to clean the track inadvertently that will literally clear the dust off. It's how it worked is we were going to take a video of it using a drone, which we did. So you fly the drone over the track, and what you're not ready for is this incredible dust storm. So basically knocked down every tree, about 400 people, and the dust literally a cloud you almost couldn't see through. So if you ever want to clean your track, get out your drone, fly it about 2 feet over with the video camera going.
That's like full-size helicopters drying a sports field.
Yeah,
there were guys racing when we did it, and they just broke out into laughter. They couldn't even the track was just, dust was gone, but it was decimated.
Have you thought of the opposite effect, just using like a shop vac maybe?
Yeah, it doesn't get dust up.
I use a shop vac on the surface of my track, but I don't know about in the scenery.
Pretty much.
Yeah, because one thing that I kind of use. Oh, sorry. I was just going to suggest. You remember, the dust. What do you call this? They're sort of like a magic duster thing. They're made for California dusters, and they make them actually for the dashboards, and they're small sort of triangle. They work really well as well,
yes,
and on the cars as well.
Yeah,
the track's easy. The scenery is the problem.
Yeah. With me, I use the shop vac when it's been a while. I have one of the large California dusters, but I recently did I kind of got inspired from this off of something I saw on Thingiverse, and I call it my Zamboni. And what I did is I 3D printed this. It's a little square, and there's a guide flag on the front. There's a guide flag on the back. There's a little nose piece for the car, and then you simply wrap a Swiffer around it. And I have some magnets on the top. I use another set of magnets to hold the Swiffer on, or you could just use an old axle. And then it looks terrible because I'm just kind of holding the rag on there. And I literally just drive that thing around the track. 2 or 3 laps, I'm talking for the day-to-day stuff. I mean, if the track had been sitting for months, this obviously wouldn't do it. But, I come in, I've been a few days, notice things sliding around a little bit more than normal. Very effective. I can wrap this thing 3 times from one Swiffer pad.
Now, why? Sorry,
I'm not using the wet ones. I'm using the dry ones.
Dry ones, right?
So, and it works pretty well. I mean,
so why, Brian? Why hasn't it got a Red Wings logo on it?
Because I haven't done the silk screen for it yet. I'm working on it, and I had black in the printer. So,
yeah, I use a vacuum when I know or believe there is debris that a vacuum can clear up. Then I'll use a Swiffer to get anything I don't think the vacuum picked up, and then I use car tires, driving them around to get the rest. Because no matter what you use on the track, the tires will still find something to pick up.
Yep.
And then you clean the tires. Run a bunch of laps cleaning the tires, and then you have
Yep.
I do that too. Each time I open the track, I'll shop vac it first. Then I have a California duster. I'll dust it with that. Then I have one of those lint rollers, the pink silicone sticky style stuff. And I'll run one of those over. You just got to be careful with those on the wood track because they're so sticky that they'll pull out any wood filler that you might have in a screw hole or something like that. So that's a bit of a problem. But even then, I'll still run a car with silicone tires for a while and clean the tires to get rid of the last bits of dust. But when it comes to the cars themselves, I think most of the dust, I have a couple of little cheap paintbrushes, like an inch wide, that I get in the stores, or a makeup brush or something like that. Those soft bristle brushes. That's really good for getting the dust off the bodies on the outside. A little bit on the inside as well. If you don't put too much oil on the cars, you don't get much inside, but if you do, then a little bit of lighter fluid on the end of a rag will clean out that on the inside. But I guess the big deal is to keep the cars as clean as you can while you store them.
I had to look up California duster because I did not know what a California duster was.
Oh yeah.
For our viewers who also don't know what a California duster is, this is the California duster.
No, they have a number of different sizes and styles. That's the big one.
Yeah. That's the big one, and then you higher. They had the smaller ones, which work perfectly on a
little triangular style thing. Yeah.
Dennis, I just use a feather duster on the cars.
Yeah, that'll work too. Yeah.
The old-fashioned.
For cleaning cars, I use a makeup brush.
Yeah.
And I think this is what diecast people do. I think that's where I picked it up from. Makeup brush, which will go over things like the mirrors and windscreen wipers. You see that? Fairly safely. Obviously, it can't be too rough, but it's fairly flexible to go around the wipers and mirrors and things without damaging them too much. So that's my dusting done for the night. Thank you.
Leo, what do you do for your scenery? Because you've got quite extensive scenery as well.
Yeah, I let it collect. Yeah, brushing it with a small brush works as well, but that's take forever to go around all the junk on the track. So yes, just sort of let it weather with dust.
You could get a vacuum cleaner and just kind of hold it above things, and then use like an air duster and go and suck.
Get a drone. Use a drone.
Or a drone, yeah.
That's a new one. Yes, a drone might.
In that case, Steve, you're bang on, because at least your scenery goes this way rather than up a chute.
Yeah.
A twister.
Drone.
Make it create a twister.
I'm a fan of the drone.
Yep.
I find that when my track needs cleaning, when it needs really cleaning, I use a shop vac, which I am afraid to empty because of all the headlight lenses and mirrors and little bits in there. But then what I do is I wipe it down with a Pledge electronic wipe, the type you use for monitors and big screen TVs. And then I usually run a car with Inox on the braids around, and that usually does the job.
Well, Ray, if it's any help to you at all, I've had that same issue with my shop vac. You kind of go outside in the area of the backyard you don't like, and it's like panning for gold.
Exactly.
That's what you're doing.
Exactly.
Did anybody else have any cleaning tips to share with the general public and Brian and whoever else?
I also bought one of those someone on here a couple of weeks back, I don't remember who it was, recommended the Track Pro Contour 2 cleaning system.
The heavy thing that you push around.
Right, and I did buy one of those, and it works well, but not on a digital track with a lot of lane changes.
Yeah,
Those will snag.
Yeah, and that's why I ended up putting a second guide on mine. The first one I did only had a single guide on the front, and it did not like the hairpin. I do have one of my corners, and I used it because of lack of other track. It's the crossover corner. It's not the digital, it's just where the corner crosses over. It's a 180. It actually looks great when cars go through there. It looks absolutely incredible when you got two cars going through there at speed that aren't colliding, obviously. So, and that's the problem I had. That's why I added the second guide to the other one. Since I added that, as long as I don't use something that's got a scoop on the front, like these Capris that flips it like a pancake, the push around one actually works pretty good for a quick cleanup. And then, like what was mentioned before, running a few cars with silicone tires can pick up some of the other stuff. On my particular track, I tend to run the red lane, which is the outside lane for the majority of the track. So the blue lane is a totally different experience when you run it. Lap times, if I take simple green to the track and I mean, take it down to bare plastic, and I've done that in the past when it was really, really bad, where it had sat for quite a while. Lap times were within 0.2 of a second. Not bad. Now probably closer to 0.5 second. And I just got more rubber laid down on the left-hand lane, that red lane. So it tends to drive a little bit better. And the right lane, I guess you'd say, has a little more marbles to it, if you will.
Time to run on that right lane more.
I let my son run on that one when he comes by. That way the old man maintains dominance without having to maintain, a superior skill level.
And I'm sure no wagering is happening at all.
No bidding.
He makes way more money than I do, so he would just raise the stakes to where I couldn't afford it anyway. So,
well, should we move on to Brian's next topic?
So hey, Greg, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Just a real quick comment about the clean tracks. Apologize for the background noise. This is probably the last night we'll be able to slot race tonight because Germany's going into another lockdown. In addition to keeping the track clean, you remember we had that thread recently where you liked my response that, you also got to keep your rails up to speed and you got to use inox and things like that to keep them from corroding again. Cause I think that's something that a lot of the complaints that a lot of people are getting into the hobby have is that, my car stops. And it's like, keep your connections tight and keep your rails clean. And, one of the things that I've also used, if you can't get inox, I've used automatic transmission fluid with Dextron in it, or whatever the local equivalent is. That they have to wipe it back off once you apply it, but that seems to help out keep corrosion and rust off.
Cool. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. The rails are more important than the track surface when it comes down to it. Obviously, if you don't have good continuity and connectivity, then doesn't matter how good the track is.
I noticed the lack of a German accent there, but you said you're in Germany. Would you happen to be one of our military folks?
No, I'm a pacifist who happens to know how to use weapons.
Oh, there you go. We won't go any further than that. What part of Germany are you in?
I'm literally, right now, I'm about 500 yards from the Hockenheim ring.
Yeah, I was in the Kaiserslautern area for many years.
Yeah, it's northwest of here.
Yeah.
Any other words of wisdom, Andy?
Nope. I'm trying to figure out how to get my video turned back on because, like, I'm in the club. I figured I might give you guys a couple of looks at the tracks that we have here at the club, but I can't figure it out. I may have to go out of the meeting and get back in.
Bottom left-hand corner. Just browse down there.
Yeah,
I'm using the iPhone app, so I don't know. But anyway, you guys keep on. I'll try to figure it out.
I said I used Zoom to request that you start your video, and apparently you said no. It gave me a response that says Andy Pinchuk will start video later.
Oh, that's what that was. I just saw. I thought it was asking me, "Do you like this app? Do you like this app?" It's like later.
There, I did it again. Read the responses before you tap it. There you go.
Reading is overrated.
Do you want to show us the club room or anything?
Yeah, hold on. Let me. How do I turn the camera around so you don't see my ugly face?
There's probably an icon somewhere, but otherwise turn the camera itself around.
All right. Well, I can't see what you guys are seeing. You guys see the camera tower?
Yep.
Yep.
So this is called Thunder Hill. It's a glued track. Also, it's very Americanized. We have oil rigs.
And now you turn the camera off.
Oops.
I'll do
I actually tried to.
Challenges of technology.
You're right.
That's always one word you don't want to hear during brain surgery. Oops.
Yeah, well, good thing is his weapons probably don't have electronics involved.
I was going to say a pacifist with weapons. That's a Canadian.
He said he knows how to use them. That doesn't mean he has them.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hopefully he gets that working later.
Greg, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
The cleaning insides of cars. Then is there sort of is it established that oil attracts dirt? In which case you need to keep your cars as dry as possible inside. But how do you judge how wet or how dry, how oily the inside, the axles, the gears should be on a car?
I think that's why if you can get bushings that hold the oil inside, then that's what.
Nein, Werbung.
Andy, are you trying to get your video working? I'm going to mute Andy again. Yeah, he's doing something else. I'm muting Andy. Okay, so yeah, so I just put oil on and I don't really care too much about dirtiness. Guys who care, do you want to address that question?
So there, I'm back. Sorry about that. I went to switch the camera around and turned it off.
No problem. Jeremy, just quickly.
Am I interrupting something?
No, just to Jeremy's point, you usually don't need as much oil as you think you do. A lot of people really over oil their slot cars. So that's kind of the first step. The other is just sometimes if you see sort of stuff in the interior, usually you see fluff balls before anything else. A Q-tip with a little mineral oil and it does the trick.
Yeah, so just one tiny little drop. Go ahead, Dennis.
No, I was saying if you're trying to remove the oil, then a Q-tip with some lighter fluid on the end, lighter fuel on the end of it, Ronsonol or something like that, or heptane or some petroleum distillate solvent rather than an alcohol will clean that stuff off, because the oils are all either synthetic or petroleum based, so you don't want to use an alcohol to do it, but the other stuff will clean it off quite well.
So I'd oil the axle, but should I just leave the gears dry? Is there any point in putting anything on gears?
No.
Elaborate.
Most of the inline gears that we use are all nylon based, and nylon is basically a lot of water, so it's self-lubricating. You don't need anything on there. As we've earlier established, oil attracts dust and gunk. So if you put a lot of oil on, you pick up a lot of bits of rubber and gunk, and it'll adhere to that. So you really do not, if you've set your gears up properly, you really don't need any oil at all. You need a tiny, tiny little drop. I mean, if you, sorry?
Keep going, it's Andy.
Yeah.
Oh shit, I thought I was on mute.
He's back. If you figure the gap around the inside of a bushing and the outside of an axle, it's nothing. So one tiny little drop on your rear axle bushings. You can spin the front axle. If it's not squeaking, leave it alone. and rarely a tiny drop of oil on the motor shaft. That's it. You don't need to, oil gears and all the rest of the stuff. Yeah. And Leo's got one. If you've got one of those little hypodermic needle applicators, and the tiniest drop of oil, because you've got to fill up a tiny space between an armature shaft and a motor bushing, or an axle and a bushing. So
basically, if you see oil on the axle, you probably put too much on.
Yeah.
Yeah, usually when I have a car that is really dirty, I'll go ahead and just strip it down as far as I can. I'll use, a piece of paper towel to take off excess oil. If it's a brand new car I know doesn't have any lubrication on it, then I'll put one drop at each bushing. And usually I don't put anything on the motor, but sometimes I'll put one on the bushing end. And then that's it. Yeah, just one tiny little drop in there.
One of the spots that you should watch, though, is on inline cars, particularly like Slottits and NSRs and others, where the armature shaft that extends through the pinion runs in that little groove on the crown gear. Now, with Slottits and NSRs and others, those hubs are either aluminum or aluminium for you guys in the UK, or they are bronze, and that groove should get a little bit of lubricant, either a grease that you can get, or maybe even just a little bit of oil down there. But that's one place that you can get some wear and some seizing if you're not careful.
Yep. I do have a tube of lithium grease that I use on those sometimes. So, yeah.
Yeah, I still have some left over from radio control car racing that was very sticky stuff that didn't get thrown off. As well.
I mean, this is taking the subject a little further. I mean, if you bypass the whole motor shaft centering the crown gear, it's a much smarter idea as well.
Oh, sure.
But
sometimes the rules of racing won't allow that.
Stuff like that.
Okay.
All right, Andy, are you ready to? Oh, looks like he's rejoining. Let's see if he can get his camera working and not hit the camera stop button again. Has to unmute. I'll leave that.
As a little filler then, what does a 100,000 rev engine sound like? Does it?
A dentist drill.
Dentist drill.
A whistle.
Yep, like a dentist drill on steroids. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're generally though a little noisier. The pitch is very, very high, but it has this kind of rougher sound to it because it's moving so much air, and the dentist drills these days are turbines, so they're very, very smooth. But when a slot car motor is running at that kind of speed in a car, it's actually pretty noisy, because of the way that the air moves around the armature and in and out of the motor, the can itself.
Well, plus, Dennis, I imagine that the body, even though it's very light, would act like a resonator, wouldn't it?
Yeah, maybe a little.
Well, depending if you're running a wing car, the noise of the wings flapping up and down can be quite noisy.
I could probably actually, believe it or not, I might actually be able to.
Oh no, he's going to make one. So
I might actually be
while
able
he's
to
working on that, I would imagine that the people who race those cars have come to appreciate it, or at the very least not be bothered by it. But I find it unpleasant. I don't like to hear that noise. It's way too reminiscent of dentist drills.
Yeah,
I heard a lot of that in my youth.
Actually, I can't help you right now because my bench power supply is a 5 amp power supply, and those motors draw way more than that when they start up, so it won't even turn right now. Believe it or not. Yeah. On pull away though, a motor like that will probably draw 10 to 15 amps instantaneously. once they're revving and running, they probably draw a lot less. But you know, I've easily seen them. Certainly at 12 volts, they'll certainly draw that much.
You probably get it going at a low voltage with low amps, right? You don't want to start it at 12 or whatever.
Even then, it's pulling a lot.
Yeah.
I've just tried; it didn't work.
Just
you know, I could probably get the X12 to run, but I don't know about the others.
Turn it like you're cranking an old car. Turn the wheel. Get it past that first magnet. No, I'm not actually wanting you to make that sound, so. There we go. Now your microphone is compressing, so we can't hear it anymore.
Wow.
Yeah, it's so loud. His microphone is cutting it out for us.
And so, and that was at about 8 volts, and this particular one was drawing about 4.5 amps at 8 volts.
Did you hear any of that, Jeremy? The startup noise? Just a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I guess it compressed like crazy, right?
Oh yeah, we heard the startup, and then when it got loud, we heard nothing. So good job on that microphone.
That sound and having wet hands is why I never wanted to get into dentistry.
You just hate the wet hands, right? I hate wet hands. All right.
That's good, well. That's good, John, because I never like my dentist to have wet hands either.
I would be put off by that. Yeah. Should we bring up the last topic?
Yeah, let's do that because this is becoming definitely.
Oh, what happened to Andy? Did we lose Andy?
I think he's still trying to do things working.
I'm still here.
Do you want to try your camera?
Are you able to get the video going, Andy?
I can try again.
Yeah.
Hold on. Let me get the video going.
I'm going to say, whatever you did to turn it off.
So right now we're having what's called a midget race. So these are cars with 1,300 cc's or less.
Whoa.
Yeah, and his microphone is doing the same thing. We can't hear what the cars are making.
So I can't hear you guys if you're saying anything. Because we were just talking about how loud they are. They're surprisingly loud. So you see my ear. That's great.
Yeah, we couldn't hear anything. Okay. Can you hear us now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah, so we heard one little bit of noise and then it compressed and we couldn't hear anything again.
Yeah, it was right next to the track. It's really loud.
Yep.
So what I was showing you guys was this is Thunder Hill. This is the glued track that I was talking about, that Chris Walker was talking about. I'm getting told off for being too loud. It's the last round of the last race for the season, so I'm going to turn my video off. You know what, Greg? Maybe we'll pick this up after they stop recording.
Okay. Okay, so the final topic was, this will probably finish out the 2 hours. When I started out, if I knew then what I know now, I would have. There you go. That's your topic. What would you love to have known when you started out that you know now? Or what would you have loved somebody to tell you when you started out? Or what do you think is the most valuable piece of information you have? Go for it.
It makes heroin look like a craving for something salty.
So you're saying that slot cars are a thing that people like?
Well, especially when, started at a young enough age, yes.
That's interesting. That's interesting, Greg. I never really thought about it that way. I know when I started out, you know nothing. I mean, you see it in the hobby shop. And that's how I began. We saw it in a hobby shop. All of us would put our 1-to-1 cars away for the season, our sports cars, and we were kind of out drinking. It was like, what are we going to do this winter? And next week I see this slot car in the hobby shop. I buy a set and we build a track up here where it is now. And we knew nothing at all. I mean, there was no mentors. You didn't really even think about going to the internet or anywhere and looking for help. You just kind of made it up as you went. You know, probably 1 or 2 years into it, you start maybe meeting somebody that starts giving you some knowledge. So yeah.
So Steve, you never did it as a youngster, Steve?
Well, I had a setback in the 60s, you know, type thing, but you know, I was not really. I mean, you know, a little bit, and always had cars and raced cars and collected cars, and so, you know, 1-to-1 cars. But no, it was when I moved back up here to Minnesota and was confronted by winter. It was like, now what, you know? But what I'm leading to is that you don't have any resources because you don't know there are resources. You build a track and you play with the cars. It's Greg, that's more interesting to me than almost anything we've talked about, because how do you get people to go to that next step where it becomes more of a hobby than just another toy up in the room? I'm not explaining this very well. But
I think I get what you're saying, and
I've never thought about it like that before. You don't look for resources. You don't know that there are resources to look for
until you do. Yeah,
you buy a set, you stumble, or in my case, and I got a feeling most other people, you run into somebody that becomes a resource. You know, I mean, we put our group together. None of us knew anything, and maybe I don't know, first or second year a guy came, I don't remember how, kind of joined us. Well, he'd been racing him forever, you know, and now you start to kind of learn things, and this is interesting. I got to think about this.
What do you got, Scott?
I think what Steve's describing is how do you move it from being an activity to a hobby?
Well, it evolves. The question isn't how. The question is, where does it come from? You don't know to evolve.
Yeah,
there's, you know.
And sometimes maybe you're better off at that point. I think back to when I started out in the mid 90s was when I went to West Seattle Speedway on a lark, and ended up running into a couple of people there who said, well, we race on Saturday, you know, get one of these Ninco cars. And I showed up, and Alan Smith was running the races for them on Saturdays.
Yeah.
Alan was very specific in the racing for the general public to get people started. There were no car modifications.
Sure.
I got called out for wrapping my plastic bushings with a little bit of electrical tape to firm up the connection. I mean, Alan is very strictly, it comes out of the box, maybe a little bit of lube, and it starts racing. And that's not necessarily, I don't think, a bad thing. You know, did our racing progress beyond that? Yeah, it did. But, you know, the lack of, you know, when you know what you don't know is when it starts to become a rabbit hole.
Well, that's not bad. All you're saying is that's where you like to be in the hobby. I mean, other people, myself included, like the evolution of the hobby and all of the things it has brought. I mean, there's guys in our group that will sit and tune their cars till 2 a.m. in a specific class. There's other guys in the group that are just like you. They want to bring a car, do very little mods and run it. I mean,
not anymore. I'm in the, you know, we tuned cars. We didn't really modify cars. Now I'm scratch building cars with Jim Hansen, and that's a whole nother disaster.
I think that's what you guys have basically talked about here. It's really an evolution. I mean, to go basically from a box full of Eldon track, which sounds more like a railroad than it does a slot car track, to discover that there are other manufacturers to choose from that have a better product. And
well, you buy a track. Like we bought a Carrera track, Formula One Carrera track. I mean, what did we know? And I guess the first step was we wanted more cars. And you know what? There really kind of weren't many. Scalextric has just come out with that Ferrari P4, if I remember right, or that first Camaro. I mean, there was so little to choose from. Yeah, this is really kind of fascinating.
Well, and don't forget, I mean, we have to give some kudos to the internet. I mean, for bringing us together. First of all, you don't feel like, you know, the second cousin twice removed because you've got a toy car that goes around the track. I mean, there are other people doing that. And also a little bit of kudos to Fly, because in '96, when they released the Viper, like that was a revelation for me. It's like, wait a minute, that's a slot car? Like it doesn't look like a blob, because Eldon cars were never to scale. Strombeckers were really about the closest.
No, you're absolutely, no, you're right. You're right. I mean, the reason I bought the set, because there was a Fly car in the cabinet and I thought it was a model. I asked him about it. It was a 512, the yellow 512 they made. Maybe it was a Spirit. I don't remember which, but they were kind of the same. Yeah.
I think my response would be that there's, I mean, I learned pretty quickly that there's more to it than just the toy set that you buy.
When did you start?
Well, I started about 10 years ago, so the internet existed, but I learned very quickly because the store that we bought our set from, Fantasy World Hobbies, had a staunch ally of slot cars in Tony Cooley, who worked at the hobby store, and some other people who worked at the hobby store. And I was invited to join the slot car club. And so I learned, you know, I go to the slot car club, they're racing this kind of car with these specifications. I'm like, okay, this is legit. So my response to that question is, although it happened very quickly for me, there's probably still a lot of guys out there similar to you that they're still in that this is just a toy kind of phase, that I would say, no, it's not just a toy. It can be just a toy if you want to play with it as just a toy, but there's a very deep and wide breadth of hobbiness that you can get into with this. Do you want to go down the rabbit hole? Are you taking the red pill or the blue pill? Basically, is your choice. So that's what I would want everybody to know who sees slot cars. You know, they go to an event that has a slot car table, or they get a slot car set, you know, as a gift for their kid or somebody else, you know, whatever. Their introduction is usually toy. I would want everybody to know that's not all there is to slot cars. Excuse me.
And I know I've drawn this analogy.
They said, don't take the pill that your mother gives you, because they do nothing at all.
Whichever one.
We've drawn this analogy before, but I'm sure it's very similar to even model railroading. You can have that HO set you pull out of the box and put around the Christmas tree, or you can go, you know, to the wall with full scale layouts and really go deep.
I think now that the internet is a thing, there's going to be a difference in personality. There's going to be people that say, okay, this is just a toy. When it breaks, I'll throw it away. And then there's going to be people say, okay, this is just a toy, but it broke and I don't want to throw it away, I want to fix it. So then they go online and learn how to fix it. And then they fall down the rabbit hole, because learning how to fix it is your introduction into the hobby.
Well, one thing leads to another thing, leads to another thing, and so on. And you start finding the niches you like. Yeah. This is interesting, though, and just where the evolution comes from per person.
Yeah.
Per person. You know,
I think there also has to be a fun
evolution, certainly not universal. You know, all of these people, the people that make sets, Carrera, Scalextrics, blah, 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 they're toys. They're toy makers. They're not, you know, when you read on the forums, why didn't they put on aluminum wheels? And why didn't they do this? And because it's a toy. And, you know, there's how many guys on here from around the world today? 12 guys in the whole world. How many?
15 right now.
15 right now, yeah.
Guys. And this Christmas and every Christmas since the 1960s, there's been thousands of sets sold and played with for somewhere between an hour and 50 years, most of it being an hour. So it's not the hobby, it's the people involved in the hobby. You know, there's a ton of people who go out and spend $10 on a camera at Walmart, and it's fine. It takes great pictures. And then there's a very small percentage of those people who will join a camera club and then, you know, develop a dark room. And it's the same thing here. We are the minority.
I don't know what you're trying to say.
I think you're saying that there's a personality where they will just, they will understand that there's more to it than their first impression, and then they will go seek out that more to it.
Yeah.
And then there's the people who say this is all there is. And I think that we could get more people to move from this is all there is to there's more to it if they knew, in spite of their personality not necessarily seeking that answer, if they were informed, hey buddy, this is all there is if you want, but there's more if you want, then we might get more people. I don't know.
But just to get back to the question, oh, sorry, Lee. Sorry, though. Just to get back to the question, though, the initial question was, what would I want to know then that I know now?
Yeah.
And one of them for me, and I think this is very relevant, is that I wish I was more open about it with more people, because it's a bit of, I call it a moped hobby. It's the kind of thing you like to do, and you don't necessarily want to see other people, other people to see you while you do it, which I think is a huge mistake, right? I mean, the way we sort of resurrected it in our sort of circle of both family and friends was when we bought our house in the 90s, in the 90s, and I had this set, and it was our turn to have the New Year's party. So what can you do to link an activity with drinking and driving, only at scale? But what was really fun about it was that the people that we had went, holy crap, I had that as a kid, and it was the most popular thing. So we had to run that darn thing for 5 years in a row till everybody had kids who were old enough to then come back and do the same thing. So it's that, if I could have changed one thing, I should have been more open with more people, because it is like, and even when you meet real one-to-one racers, it's like, do you slot race? And it's like, yeah, it's like you're buying a bag of Coke. I mean, that's one thing I wish I was a little more forward with when I first started getting back into it. Because when I was into it initially, it was a very popular thing.
I also want to read Slothead's comment, and then we'll go to Dennis here. Slothead said what he would want to know was that he was going to end up spending as much as he has. In the beginning, I was concerned about spending several $100s. That was several $1,000s ago, but it was well worth it.
I was going to say, if I knew then what I know now, maybe I wouldn't have started at all the second time round, because it turned into a different hobby for me. I mean, my first time round was way back in the 60s and 70s and 80s with club racing, where everything was scratch built and everything was about the racing. And if I'd known what was going to happen to me now, I would have realized that it became everything's about the cars. The racing itself is not necessarily the be all and end all. A lot of it is just about the cars, and I've got to, I didn't realize that I was going to become addicted to how pretty these things are. And over the years, the one thing that I tried to learn, and I'm become reasonably good at it now, is not to buy every livery of the same damn car just because it's pretty. Because man, did I do that to start with? Oh,
and how's that more cars than you can buy?
Yep, it's worked out pretty well. I'm getting to the point now where I realize that one slotted 956 is pretty much the same as the next one, or the next one, or the next one, or the next one. So the fact that I have 5 doesn't means that I really don't need 6.
Okay, but listen, Dennis, I'm not an enabler, but no, you should buy more.
No.
The new one is way prettier than the other ones you've already.
The thing that gets me these days, of course, is every time there's a new car, is there some new technology in it? Is it a new manufacturer? Is it a different design? What have they done that was different to the last one? And that interests me. And so you will find that yes, I already have 2 MR slot car McLaren F1s, but the new one has a different motor and a different pod. And therefore, what do? You got to find out, right? Or, slotted chain, make some change somewhere and you got to find out about it. Or Polycar have a March Formula One and you've got one, but the newer versions have a different chassis, right? And so how does that work, right? Or Slotted brings out the Alfa Romeo DTM, and yes, they all look the same, but they change the chassis after a certain point,
And you probably think that was by mistake.
They know what they're doing.
Look, I know that they do those things to catch suckers like me, but at the same time, there's also a performance increase in there that you sometimes want to experience.
They absolutely know that you and I have quit buying every livery of every car. So, like, how the heck do we get Dennis and Scott to buy another darn car? Well, we'll
Change
put an
the
extra
color of the
little
gear.
widget in it.
Yeah.
What were you going to say, Leo?
All right, getting back to the business of what you'd like to have known years ago, and this is kind of the transition from drifting out of slot cars, then coming back in again. So I've always been a sort of car person, so I had a collection, still have a collection of die-cast cars. I was at a die-cast swap meet in Glasgow, and there were these guys, a couple of guys sitting at a table with slot cars. And I thought, oh, what's this? Oh my God, where have these guys come from? And it was Pendle Slot Racing. Sean Willersgill from Pendle, and somebody, I'm not sure if it was his son or somebody else with him, and they were there. So I started talking to them, and they gave me a business card. I bought some bits and pieces from them, I can't remember what, but they gave me a business card, and I thought, wow, the world has changed. So anyone starting now, it'd be handy to be able to tip them off and say, right, there's a web, obviously in this day and age, should be a website. And there's a website, go there, you'll find out all the stuff you need to know of what's available. And that drags you in, that sets you on the path down the slippery slope. And then from there, they go and they learn about things like this Zoom meeting and the websites, the forums. So yeah, so for me, somebody said to me, there's a company down north of Manchester called Pendle Slot Racing. Check them out. That would have helped.
But it got you in quicker is what it would have done.
Yeah, and thank you so much for mentioning our wonderful support group here.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's the modern way, isn't it? Yes.
Hi, my name is Greg, and I'm a slot car addict. Hi, Greg.
We love you, Greg.
If we can take a look at this topic from a slightly different perspective, it's kind of fascinating what it went off into. Again, this was one of my ideas for a topic. But part of the original intent was, knowing what I know now, if I knew then, would you have started with a different scale? Would you have started with a different track system? Would you have avoided this and gone to this? You know, if I knew what I do now, I never would have bothered with plastic. I would have started with a routed track, or vice versa. You know, or I love Slothead's comment about, I really would have liked to know how much it's going to cost me. Because you saw I have a fairly modest collection, but if you look, you know, you figure those cars average $40 a piece. There's several $1,000s worth of, like somebody else mentioned, toys sitting on that table. And that's not counting the track, the guardrails, the computer, the aftermarket controllers, the aftermarket power supply. I mean, think pitfalls. Were there any pitfalls you really would have liked to have known about when you first started this? And, you know, maybe something that if someone was going to get into this today, what advice would you give them?
Well, one thing to keep in mind, Brian, is that all toys are bought by adults. And most of the time, if not for their children, then themselves for their children.
Yeah.
You have to define adult.
What's that, sorry?
You'll have to define adult.
Exactly. Yes. Well, let's just say chronological adult. How about that? Does that work?
All right. All right.
Only. So I'll throw an answer out that's kind of been banging around in my head to that. Tires. That's it. I mean,
actually, that's
a thing, right?
Because that's an excellent point, because that's a great thing. If I knew then what I know now, is that one of the sort of disheartening things is when the tires go off on the car that you haven't touched for a little while, and you think that the whole car is no good, right? Like that happens to some folks.
Yeah, or that the car just doesn't want to go very well, and you don't realize that it is because of the tires. You know, they look okay. Why isn't the car going well? Or, you know, you take your car to a friend's track, or you get a used car from eBay or whatever like that, and you don't know why it's not running good on your track. And 9 times out of 10, it's because the tires are wrong for your track, or they're just plain old tires, or whatever. You know, the tires are bad or bad for your track. And every track.
And to your point, that leads down a whole other rabbit hole, because that's one of the reasons I started casting, was because I started doing my own tires, because you couldn't find them. right? Like even Scalextrics replacements, forget it.
Yep. That's what I would have said. Anybody else got one?
Yeah, I got one.
All right, Martin.
I'd like somebody to point to me in the early days to things like looking at binding guides, looking at true axles, looking at true wheels, just some basics, how to set the chassis up so it's flat, make sure you got a bit of body float. Just a very simple set of guidelines to get you making a car drive competently, if you see what I mean. If they all came out the box like a Thunderslot does, well, no problem. But they don't, and people tend to start off with Scalextrics or Carrera or one of those sets, and it tends to put you off because you can't keep it in the slot very well. So had somebody give me the guidance of a crude over 10 or 12 years racing slot cars, but really simple, make sure your screws aren't tight in your body. Make sure that the wheels are, are not sort of doing this when it goes down the straight. A couple of easy things.
Blueprinting, basically, your basics of getting the car to run with.
But not so complex that you put a new guy off or gal.
Yeah.
Even just basic maintenance.
Yeah, basic maintenance. Yeah.
And I think a lot of that happens in a club environment, but in a home racing environment, it's difficult, or it was difficult early on for people who are unused to that and didn't realize. And maybe that's another thing that we didn't realize 10 years ago, that even 10, 12, 15 years ago, there was a lot of activity on the internet, but we just didn't know to go look for it.
Yeah, that's so true, Dennis. The guys in the club teach me more in 10 minutes, and I can learn from hours and hours of driving at home. Something as simple as, hey, your front end's a bit tight, loosen that front end up a touch. Or just the experienced hand giving us some basic guidelines, Don't let your body bind on your chassis, If your body's clipping it as it's trying to go around a corner, you're unsettling just little things like that. So you're so right, Dennis.
Mm-hmm.
Slothead has another good one I'll read. He says, he wished he had known it's meaningless to ask what's the best when best doesn't exist without knowing the context.
Right.
Like we had that conversation last week. There is no the best without knowing all the parameters of what you're asking about. Context is everything, John says. Awesome. So we've only got 10 minutes left. Anybody else got any things they wish they had known at the start of things?
If I'd known then what I know now, I probably wouldn't have bought so many fly cars.
If you knew then what you know now, you would have run a whole bunch more races.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I've never been happy with the fly myself either.
I'm with Brian, though. If I'd known then what I know now, I would have built a wood track straight away.
Actually, one thing I can also say is, and I'm starting to do this now, is it's nice to have, shelf queens in the box. Take them out and run them, because they're going to end up being skeet for the next generation. So you may as well enjoy them.
Yep. Although there are some that have probably grown in value since we bought them.
Not retire on it value.
Well, some of those early sets of cars, like the 3 Rothmans Porsches from Slotted, or the Fly Corvettes that came out at the 2013, the 60th anniversary, or one of those. Couple of other sets like that, or the Legends set from Scalextric that had the Lotus 49 and the Eagle in them. I think some of those may be worth more on eBay now than we paid for them at the time.
But you're still trying to sell to folks like us, though, right?
Right.
Well, I'm trying to sell to, you're selling to collectors, I guess, or to late on the scene collectors.
Right.
However, if you're a toy collector, you're probably more apt to buy something from the 60s, like even a Cox 124th scale, just to, they're an evergreen part of a toy collector's collection. So, toy collectors don't really look at new toys as being fantastic. They're really looking more to the past than the present. So perhaps at one point, our grandchildren may think that you had a Fly 917 and you used it. I doubt it, but hey, there's hope. There's always hope.
Right.
Chris, did you have something to add? Nope, just being agreeable. I'm fine with that. Go ahead, Scott.
I share a story that kind of was funny the other day. My wife even found it funny. Dennis will appreciate
then.
Dennis will appreciate this. Trying to build these cars with Jim, it's a scavenger hunt. You know, we've got all these different components, and you got to go. I had to go to 3 different places to get the brass I wanted. The wheels coming from England, tires, literally the front tires and the rear tires coming from 2 different places. I bought as much from Allen as I could, axles and guides and et cetera, et cetera. Well, I couldn't find any hexagonal brass, which Jim has started using for his front axle tube. And I'm like, well, I can't find any of this stupid hexagonal brass. And Jim's like, well, maybe we could make a die and pound the round tubing hexagonal. And I just shook my head, and it's like, oh my God, you mean we could make this even more complicated? Right on, I'm in. And my wife just was in hysterics beside me. I had to call Jim up after he sent me that message. It's like, oh my God.
I'll have to talk to Jim about that hexagonal. That's a little bit over the top. Square brass works fine, but why hexagonal?
I don't know.
Scott, you need to talk to him and get Jim onto this call.
I've done it.
That new technology, that hexagonal brass has got to make that car faster.
Yeah.
Anything that's hard to find is something you want to add, because it'll shave tenths off your lap time.
If they make it in a C class, he's going to have to buy it.
The whole thing was, what a scavenger hunt this is. It's insane. You know, it's Jim says, yeah, wasn't it nice in the 60s when you could go to your local shop and look on the wall and there was every single bit and bob you need to build a car? Not so anymore. And then Jim, God love him, he's an artist. So he doesn't write down everything that he uses when he builds all of these cars. Every time he needs more of it, he has to go on this entire search to figure out what the heck it was that he ran out of, first off, and then where do you go get it? And yeah, I just, oh my God. So the first thing I did was I wrote a Jim's car recipe and listed out all the stuff. Because I think like a manager, I guess. It's like, if I don't have to reinvent that wheel down the road, my life just got however much longer. So I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just that alone, what a great story.
On that. Well, and then my wife was there to enjoy it with me when he'd sent that. And then last week, if I may, we had talked about people maybe getting out of line sometimes dealing with corner marshals and that. And it made me think of something we break out periodically with our, of course, I'm not going to be able to figure out how to share it.
Looks like you're starting.
Now
I see a Zoom web browser.
Where did I have it? Can you see this?
Oh yeah, the 12 commandments. Yeah.
Okay. Well, instead of RC racing, put slot racing in. But I used to break this out at least once a year and remind my fellow racers that, guys, I'm going racing to have fun. A mad driver's a bad driver, etc. And then finally, the Winston Million is not on the line. You can't even win lunch at Taco Bell.
Yeah. Hey, Scott, we had a similar list driving full-size Formula 2000 cars and most sports. So
yeah. Now, if I could find the stop share, there it is. But yeah, it's things like that. If I notice that somebody or a couple somebodies have maybe gotten a little out of line at the driver meeting before our next RC race, I break that out and I say, guys, some of the things that we need to kind of keep in mind or remember, because there's sure no point to anybody going home mad. The what I wish I knew is that people are so devoted to their hobby that they think that other people can do the hobby wrong. And that causes more friction in any hobby that you care to think of. Collecting matchbook covers, to slot cars, to RC cars, to full-size racing, there's always one group that thinks the other group's doing it wrong. And it's like, dude, you can't, if you're doing a hobby wrong, you've messed up in life.
There is no wrong for something that you're enjoying, that you're doing it for fun. If you're having fun, you're doing it right.
Yep.
Just because somebody else does it different doesn't mean you're doing it wrong.
Or that they're doing it wrong.
Or they're doing it wrong, yeah.
You know,
on that note, we're at 2 hours. Do you have something else on that, or do we got a whole nother topic to start?
How many people remember Weird Jack from the 90s on the old slot reflector? You know, his thing was always part of life's great pageant. And that's, I guess I've tried to adopt that philosophy in life. I see somebody that I just shake my head and it's just not part of life's great pageant.
Yeah, and hopefully the good news is you don't have to live with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point you make, Scott. We've had 6 local clubs in this area, and we've had 1 or 2 bad eggs turn up and try and disrupt. You know, they want to turn the club into their thing, do it their way. You got 10 guys.
The last 5, so in this next one, it obviously will work, right?
Yeah, but I mean, you got 10 guys. It has to be consensus, you know. But I like what you said, you know, it's the walk on by. It's like the internet. Just scroll past. Forget it. Part of life's rich pageant. I like that.
Part of life's rich pageant. I think that is good philosophy for all things and a good place to end the recording. So I'm going to say bye and we'll keep chatting. Bye.